Please be seated. Good afternoon and welcome. We are delighted that you are all here today to share in the ceremonies and the festivities attendant upon the swearing in of a justice of our court. I also extend a special welcome to our honored guests from the other branches of state government, from the federal bench and bar, from our State Bar Association, and especially to the family and friends of James Zazzali. James Zazzali is the fourth new justice to join the New Jersey Supreme Court in less than a year. Each time we have come together to celebrate with a new colleague, and also, as we do so, to say goodbye to a former colleague and friend. We will do both today. I will begin then, as on prior occasions, by saying goodbye. Justice Daniel O'Hearn has graced us with his gentle wisdom for 19 years, and we will miss him greatly. Recently, I had an opportunity to say a few words about Justice O'Hearn to a smaller group in a different setting. I spoke then for the court, as I do now. Justice O'Hearn's institutional understanding and his love of our court have been gifts to us all. Dan reminded us that in finding common ground, we would find our center. And he taught us, by example, to speak with strength and dignity. He thought about the men and women whose lives were changed by our decisions as real people, with compassion and concern. When he believed we were wrong, he said so clearly. His sense of justice infused his work and our work. He defined us at our best. We wish Justice O'Hearn good health, joy in his family, and many, many more rewarding and fulfilling years. Justice O'Hearn. Our program will formally open now with an invocation offered by Father Robert Drinan, who has journeyed from Washington, D.C. to participate in this ceremony. Father Drinan is a former dean of Boston College Law School, has served in Congress with distinction, and today is a well-known professor of legal ethics at Georgetown University Law Center. Father Drinan, would you please deliver the invocation? Thank you.
Let us pray. Impart your benediction, O God of justice and love, on your son, James Zazzali, as he undertakes the solemn duty of interpreting your law for the people of this state. May Justice Zazzali continue and extend the noble tradition of this tribunal, which is esteemed everywhere by the bench and the bar and the citizens of America. The dream and vision of Chief Justice Arthur Vanderbilt lives on here today and forever. Georgetown University rejoices in the elevation of a loyal son of Georgetown College and its law school. Extend your blessing, O God, on the memory of Justice Zazzali's father, also a devoted son of Georgetown. And bring, O Lord, grace and peace to Justice Zazzali's wife, Eileen, and to their 5 children. We rejoice with them in the deserved honor which has come to all of them on this glorious day. Send your grace, O God of wisdom, on your servant. Make him ever more learned in the law, wise in his judgments, and courageous in upholding the mandates of your law. and deepen within all of us, O Lord, our understanding of your law and our gratitude for the love which you extend to us at every moment of our lives. May the spirit and sanctity of St. Thomas More, the heavenly patron of all lawyers, be present here in a special way at this inspired and awesome moment. May Justice Zazzali continue, O Lord, to be an instrument of your justice and of your peace. This we ask in the name of God our Creator, God our Redeemer, and God our Sanctifier. Amen.
Thank you, Father Drinan. Now, Deborah Ford, music director of the Trinity Episcopal Cathedral here in Trenton, and a soloist with the Trenton Symphony Orchestra, will sing our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Deborah Ford. It is now my great pleasure to introduce to you someone who needs no introduction, someone you all know well, the Governor of the State of New Jersey, Christine Todd Whitman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice. I am very pleased to join with family and friends and colleagues of Jim Zazzali and his family at his swearing in as Associate Justice of the New Jersey State Supreme Court. Our state's highest court is recognized nationally. It has a reputation for its justice, for its foresight, and its far-reaching, inspired decisions. Today, we further this court's reputation with the addition of yet another outstanding justice. As we do, we owe a debt of gratitude to outgoing Justice O'Hearn. During his 19 years on the Supreme Court, Justice O'Hearn tackled complex issues such as school funding, affordable housing, the state system of reviewing the death penalty. Yet no matter how complex the issue, it was Justice O'Hearn who always helped the court find its center. Justice O'Hearn, your service to the people of the state of New Jersey, your decisions and your enduring influence will live on through the decisions that you made and helped this court to reach. And on behalf of all the citizens of the state of New Jersey, I want to thank you for your outstanding service. You have set very high standards, but I know that Jim Zazzali has both the personal and the professional qualities to help him continue to serve our court in your best tradition and to serve our court well. In selecting nominees for this, the highest court, I look for intelligence, integrity, fairness, and compassion. James Zazzali has all these qualities. He also has another wonderful quality, humility. And I might add one more that I think will see some use on the court, and that is humor, because he is joining another justice with an extraordinary sense of humor, who I accused of not having a sense of humor when I was at his swearing in, and he has not let me forget that. But when a reporter asked Jim Zazzali about filling the shoes of Justice O'Hearn, Jim said, "They are impossible shoes to fill." My pledge to him is that I would hope to continue not only his sense of vision, but perhaps his sense of decency. Justice Zazzali's life has been devoted to serving the people of the state of New Jersey. As an Essex County prosecutor, attorney general, chair of the state's Committee on Investigation, to name just a few of the positions that he has held throughout his long career. In those capacities, he has served ably and well. I know he is ready for the challenge that now confronts him. Woodrow Wilson said that justice must be more than prompt, fair, and open application of impartial rules. It must include sympathy and helpfulness, and a willingness to forgo self-interest in order to promote the welfare, happiness, and contentment of others and of the community as a whole. Justice O'Hearn has devoted his life to promoting the welfare, happiness, and contentment of the people of our state. I know that Justice Zazzali will do the same with vision and with decency. Thank you very much.
I am always delighted to share a stage with former Governor Brendan T. Byrne. It was Governor Byrne who nominated our newest justice to be Attorney General, anticipating, I expect, that James Zazzali would someday join other colleagues of similar background on the bench. I now ask Governor Byrne to come forward and address you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice, Governor Whitman, distinguished justices, honored guests, Father Drinan. Ruthie and I were talking on the way down about how the United States Supreme Court won't let you pray at football games anymore. I guess it's swearing it in, it's okay still. Football. Sort of, you should be guided by Yogi Berra, who I don't even remember. Jimmy Pearsall used to make the sign across in the next to the batter's box when he got up to bat. And Yogi Berra once looked at him and said, "Jimmy, why don't you just let God watch the game?" Anyway, what I want to do this afternoon is try somehow to take credit for Jimmy Zazzali. I can't do it without stretching the truth, and wouldn't be my first time. But I could say I gave him his first job as assistant prosecutor, but he didn't even want that job. I could say I made him Attorney General. He didn't want that either. Incidentally, it was, I haven't seen this anywhere. Jimmy Zazzali and Luke Hayden, who's here, are the people who put together the deal, build or not build the sports complex. And it was their labors that made that deal work. Otherwise, if they had said no, we wouldn't have the sports complex. Anyway, he may never have a bigger decision to make. Well, I've been figuring this. I figured that what I did do was I picked Dan O'Hearn at an age where he could retire just in time to give Jimmy the opportunity. And so I congratulate Justice Zazzali and recognize, as you have, the outstanding service of Justice O'Hearn. Nobody needs testimonials to Jim Zazzali. You know, when the Bar Association called me to check on him, they spent the entire interview telling me what a talented person Jim Zazzali is, and assuming that I agree. Seriously, this man's credentials are fabulous, but the enthusiasm for the appointment comes more from more than that. It comes from the fact that Jim knows how to be a friend. He has a genuine concern for his fellow man. He wants to be fair. He will go out of his way when it's the right thing to do. He can be gregarious and fun and still have time to read about Sir Thomas More. He's a student of the law. He is just the right person to join the Supreme Court, which has enjoyed a national reputation for excellence, but must earn that reputation every day. There can be no doubt that Mr. Justice Zazzali will fill that bill. I was talking to Eileen before, remembering that she had a birthday party for Jim for his 50th birthday, and she had us all out in the driveway singing "The Best of Times Is Now." That was a great party, but you were wrong, Eileen. The best of times is now. Thank you.
You may notice that Georgetown Law Center is well represented here today. Our next speaker is one of its most distinguished graduates. I now ask John Farmer, Jr., Attorney General of the State of New Jersey, to say a few words.
Thank you, Chief Justice. What I have to say is really pretty simple. Jim Zazzali is the most decent person and the most selfless public servant I have met in the course of my professional life. Governor Whitman mentioned the enormous responsibilities he shoulders as a public servant, and his regard within the private bar is also well known. Beyond that, however, Jim has served as a facilitator of good government in every administration for the past 2 decades, offering to serve in whatever way he was called, and he was called frequently. Whether the context was assisting in background assessments of judicial candidates or in assisting in the search for a superintendent of the New Jersey State Police, Jim has always been there when called, for no other reason than to serve the public. Jim's career serves as an antidote to the prevailing cynicism about the value of public servants and the merit of public servants. I gained some insight into the source of Jim's commitment during the course of the past few years. At some point while I was in the governor's counsel's office, he started talking to me about and loaning me books, a Graham Greene novel or two, then a book on President Lincoln's suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, then a biography of Thomas More, which I confess I didn't finish, but it didn't really matter, because within weeks a second biography of Thomas More arrived in the mail. This one, written some years earlier, was really the better one, Jim assured me. He was so sure I'd like it that he checked it out of the Monmouth County Library so that I could read it. Guilt-ridden, I did. Jim paid the late fine. But that wasn't the end of it. About 1.5 years ago, on a trip to London, Jim insisted that we visit the tower where Thomas More was imprisoned, the hill where he was beheaded, the chapel where his headless body was interred. We rode around London in 40-degree temperatures, Jim, his wife Eileen, and I, sitting in the exposed second floor of the double-decker bus at Jim's insistence, so that we could really get a feel for the place. I have an image which I think I'll keep with me the rest of my life of careening around London in the second floor of that double-decker bus with Jim telling us who was beheaded and why and where they lived and where they died and where they were buried. And then it rained, but did we go downstairs? No. Jim got out an umbrella and he opened it. We continued our tour and we finally went to dry off at a wax museum, I suppose, to see what these people must have looked like with their heads on. As I thought about what to say here today and reflected on the course of my relationship with Jim, it seemed to me that his interest in Graham Greene and Abraham Lincoln, and especially in Thomas More, speaks volumes about the man himself and about the kind of justice he will make. All three, Graham Greene in his novels, Lincoln and Thomas More in their writings and in their lives, speak in one way or another to the necessity to make clear moral and legal choices in an extremely complex world, a world that in its complexity makes the task of decision-making extremely difficult and painful and all too easy to temporize. In Richard Marius's biography of Thomas More, for example, the second biography to which I was subjected, the author notes that part of the enduring spell More has cast on succeeding generations lies in the human wrestlings he had with death. He made his choice to lay down his life, not with the bold, unthinking, and superhuman heroism common to legends, but rather with the ordinary doubts and terrors that would afflict most of us in his situation. He is closest to us here in these feelings of fearsome ambivalence that we all share in dire moments of the human condition. Thomas More's choice was made more difficult because he was giving up so much: family, career, comfort, prestige, to suffer shame and death as a traitor. But he made the choice because in the end he had to live and die with the dictates of his conscience. This struggle of conscience with complexity also characterizes the Greene novels that Jim Zazzali lent me and the heart-wrenching choices Abraham Lincoln had to make. Jim's appreciation for the need to make such difficult choices augurs well, I think, for his tenure as a justice. He understands the difficulty of the job, the clash of seemingly irreconcilable interests with which the court must contend on a daily basis. Most important, he understands the need to make clear decisions, notwithstanding the complexities. This understanding places him in the highest tradition of the New Jersey Supreme Court, a court justly celebrated for its independence and vision, and for justices like Dan O'Hearn, whom Jim succeeds. There are some lines from a Catholic hymn that, in my view, could have been written about Jim Zazzali's approach to his life. You are called to act with justice. You are called to act with love. You are called to walk humbly with your God. Because he has lived those words, Jim is now called to our state's highest court. Jim, we are all the richer for your calling.
Before I call on James Zazzali and his wife Eileen to come to the podium for the administration of the oath, I also would like to add my voice to that of the speakers before me in praise and welcome. When we met before upon the swearing in of Justices Long, Venero, and LaVecchia, I spoke of the fresh viewpoints and new strengths that new members of the court bring to the group of 6 that they join. We are a collegial court, each of us committed to the court as an institution and to the ideal of justice as our pole star. James Zazzali, by temperament, intellect, and background, is so well qualified to fulfill with distinction his new role as Associate Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court. He has served, as others before me have pointed out, in high office in the state of New Jersey, and he has served he has been in private practice for close to 40 years. James Zazzali's reputation in and outside of the legal community of our state is exemplary, a model for other lawyers who strive for excellence. He brings with him then an understanding of the concerns of private clients and of the needs of government. He has argued more than 25 cases before our court, which suggests that moving to the other side of the bench should be an easy walk. We look forward to his contribution to our conferences. His gracious manner and his wit will keep us in line, as has his predecessor. I have known James Zazzali since 1981. I am personally delighted to welcome him to our court. It is with great delight that I finally ask the Honorable James R. Zazzali and his wife Eileen to come to the podium for the administration of the oath of office as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of New Jersey. We have Christine at the center.
I, James R. Zazzali,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments
and to the governments
established in the United States
established in the United States
and in this state,
and in this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that I will perform the duties
and that I will perform the duties
of Justice of the Supreme Court
of Justice of the Supreme Court
faithfully,
faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly,
and justly,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. I now ask Justice O'Hearn to perform one last and pleasurable duty. Justice O'Hearn, would you please introduce our newest justice to those present?
Thank you, Chief Justice, Governor Whitman, Governor Byrne, distinguished judges, members of the legislature, justices of our court, and other judges. Now, first, Chief, how much time do I have? I want to set the record straight. For 18 and a half years, no one listened to me. It's only in these final moments that these tributes are flowing forth. And Father Drinan, you won't remember this, but I met you at the Harvard Law School over 40 years ago when you came over to speak to a group of us. But I have a brief presentation to make and a short story to tell in connection with the introduction of Justice Zazzali. The presentation is of a gavel that was given to me by Stanley Cohen, a Monmouth County lawyer and a former judge of the Long Branch Municipal Court. The inscription on the gavel recites original White House material removed in 1950. The gavel symbolizes commitment to the ideals of President Harry S. Truman, a president who gave up the opportunity to live in and enjoy the White House in order to preserve it for his successors. Before I present the gavel, I must tell the story. About 2 years ago, Governor Whitman, I knew something that was not generally known in New Jersey. I knew that before this date, 3 and possibly 4 members of the New Jersey Supreme Court would have retired. I also knew that from prior inquiries that they had made about judicial candidates, that Jim Zazzali and retired Justice Schreiber were among those who would serve as the messengers of the governor to review and recommend candidates to fill these seats. I was presumptuous enough to write a letter to Jim on the subject. And this is what I wrote, at least parts of it. I wouldn't read the entire letter. The single most important thing to be considered in the appointment process is the goal to be achieved by the appointment. Regardless of one's political philosophy, we ought to perceive in the judicial article of the bipartisan Constitution of 1947 the making of a great institution of government, an institution that was at once not only independent, but one whose members would be so well qualified for office that their opinions would command the respect of their fellow citizens. The paramount goal of the governor should be to preserve the New Jersey Supreme Court as the leading state court in the nation. What makes a court excel, I asked. First and foremost is an independence of thought and courage to hold fast to the rule of law in the face of greatest pressures. And I cited an opinion which the members of the court hate called In re Randolph. I also mentioned Chief Justice Walentz's last written words. In his letter of resignation, they were of concern for the judiciary. He wrote, "We have a fine court system still supported by the people of New Jersey. In these somewhat difficult times, that support is one of our most important sources of strength. The ultimate source of our strength and integrity remains our own commitment to judicial independence, total and uncompromising. It is difficult to assess in advance judges who will exhibit such qualities of courage and judicial independence, total and uncompromising. We may recall how through years of opposition, the Weintraub, Hughes, Walentz, and Poritz courts have clung to constitutional ideals in the face of opposition. I then went on to discuss other qualities, including breadth of perception, academic achievement. And I even said, Governor, you should consider a sense of humor. And I noticed that you considered that important because on the occasion of Justice Veneer's installation, you said that he was not known for his sense of humor, but I must confess that the members of the court have occasionally found signs of a developing sense of humor. But I did find that your nominee is well known for his humor. And I came across this that I must share with you, and he wrote it to Graham Greene, that is, James Zazzali wrote this to Graham Greene, the British author. And he recounts this anecdote. Dear Mr. Greene, many years ago when I was a student at Georgetown Law Center in 1962, there was a course given in trials. Learning how to try a case. In each class, a group of students was given an hypothetical set of facts. And based on those facts, they presented a case. Some students played the role of witnesses, and some students played the roles of attorney. I was assigned to represent a man accused of bigamy, he said, and who had long-time affairs with a number of women. The professor was, in fact, a judge, the chief judge for the federal court in Washington, D.C., who, in an expression of politically incorrect language, he called an irascible Irishman named Matt McGuire. In any event, as I was cross-examining my client, Jim wrote, the bigamist, I was all over the lot with meandering questions. Judge McGuire jumped in and said, young man, you're wasting time. Graham Greene wrote a book called The Heart of the Matter, and that is what I want you to do. Get to the heart of the matter in this case. I responded, however, Your Honor, Graham Greene also wrote a book called The End of the Affair, and that is what I am trying to do here. Get to the end of this affair. Not to be outdone, and with his pride a little ruffled, the judge glared down and said, listen here, counselor. Mr. Green's most recent novel, which just came out, is entitled A Burnt Out Case. If you are not careful, that is exactly what your case will be. The class went into an uproar, he told Graham Greene. Daunted but determined, I stepped backwards, he wrote, from the lectern down the aisle, did a little salaam to the judge and said, I now appreciate, Your Honor, the significance of Greene's most significant work, The Power and the Glory. So he does have a sense of humor. To sum up, the qualities I said that must be sought: intelligence, open-mindedness, willingness to doubt, ability to express legal principles, in forceful reason and in clear prose, collegiality, breadth of experience in public and private life, and yes, perhaps a sense of humor. I said, you must search for judges who can make self-evident the rightness and acceptability of the court's opinions, quoting a law review article of Justice Handler. Governor Whitman, I believe that through your appointments, you have preserved the New Jersey Supreme Court as the leading state court in the nation. Through a marvelous twist of fate, you found in your messenger a person so well qualified for office that his opinions would command the respect of his fellow citizens. You found a person whose qualities of courage, intelligence, open-mindedness, and occasional humor can, in the words of Justice Handler, make self-evident the rightness and acceptability of the court's actions. It is my pleasure on this occasion to introduce and present this gavel to the 30th and newest Associate Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court, James R. Zazzali.
I'm going to take a risk here and put the microphone down. I've told Eileen that if it's not working back here and they can't hear me, to put it back up, or if in the back of the room you're having trouble, just give a few waves and Eileen will adjust it. Chief Justice and Associate Justices, Governor Whitman, Governor Byrne, state and federal judges, state and federal officials, legislative leaders, members of the clergy, Bar Association representatives, my firm, my family, my friends. There are some of you who have known me ever since I was a youngster, and all along I think you thought and you predicted that I would end up in a black robe, but I think you had something else in mind. I'd like to ask your indulgence today on a couple of scores. First, that I normally do not like to read a speech, but in order to get through this somehow, both the lighter and the heavier parts, I think I need to rely upon it, frankly. And to the extent that I rely upon quotes of others, it's simply because what I've said I think has probably been said better by others. I know too that many of you who have been out here watching these ceremonies in the past have said to yourselves, well, if you've seen one swearing-in ceremony, you've seen them all. And you're probably right. This one is no different, and yet each of us that has taken this kind of oath in whatever branch of government, it has been different to each of us. These events are usually a litany of thank yous. The people may be different, but the common theme is gratitude, and that is as it should be. Gratitude and expressing that gratitude, it occurs to me, are essential on this planet if our profession and if our people are to survive. So I say to all of you in front of me and behind me that you have been a part of a small but significant world who have made the difference in my life. And My special thanks, of course, must begin, and from the heart begins, with Governor Whitman, who appointed me to this court. You made all this possible, Governor. You made this act of faith, and I only hope and pray, and this is my pledge and promise to you, that I will do all I can do to be equal to the faith that you have reposed in me. And I hope as well that I can serve with the same dignity and decency with which you have graced the governorship of New Jersey. So thank you on behalf of all of our citizens. And I hope to return later for another reference to the governor. To Governor Byrne on my left, I appreciate your remarks, Brendan, and I look back at all that you have meant to me, and I do it in a heartfelt way, to me and to my family. You named me and Andy assistant prosecutors. You named us general counsel to the Sports Authority. You named me Attorney General. Gosh, Brendan, I feel sorry now that I never voted for you. Some of you have heard some of these stories before, so you will also have to indulge me because they do have a point. When I was first considered for assistant prosecutor, and I wasn't considered for it, I was pushed into it by the late, great Judge Larry Whipple, whom many of you knew of happy memory, for whom I clerked. And Judge Whipple effectively impressed upon Judge Waugh the need for Brendan Byrne to appoint me. So reluctantly, I went up there for an interview, did not want the job, wanted to go to work for my late dad. Well, I went in for the interview, and for 20 minutes, I sat in Brendan Byrne's office, and for 20 minutes, while I answered questions, he looked down and was shining his shoes for those entire 20 minutes, his loafers of happy memory, and never looked me once in the eye, except at the very end, after shining his shoes for 20 minutes, looked up and he said, "All right, you're hired, but it'll be a risk." Unfortunately, right now, he slipped a note to Governor Whitman and said, "This guy is still a risk." Perhaps so, but it's too late. Seriously, Brendan, thank you again, you for everything. You've made all of this possible as well. Chief Justice Poritz, I appreciate your presiding today and your comments. I'm fortunate to be part of the Poritz Court, which has already distinguished itself in so many, many ways. And I'm excited at working with the prospect of working with six justices whom I know, whom I have come to like so very much, whom I respect. I know together we can, indeed we will, maintain the tradition of excellence of this court. And no one has personified the tradition of excellence of the New Jersey Supreme Court better than Dan O'Hearn, whom I succeed. And as I said a week ago, you'll note I did not use the word replace, I used the word succeed, because Dan O'Hearn is irreplaceable. When I first moved, Eileen and I, to Monmouth County 33 years ago, and I still think those clam diggers think we're carpetbaggers, but when we first moved down there, I can remember someone saying, "You have to meet Dan O'Hearn, the mayor of Red Bank. He would remind you," they said, "of Abraham Lincoln." And indeed, that's true. He is Lincoln-esque, not just in body, but in spirit as well. And it's based on the observation of all that know him. It is that spirit of integrity and intelligence which suffuse his work, but more than that, it is his compassion, it is his courage which define the man, which define his character, and he is a role model for all of us. Dan, thank you for that gavel. As may be apparent later, that takes on a special significance. John Farmer, thank you for your remarks. All New Jersey, I think, appreciates the fine job you're doing as Attorney General. In the opinion of many of your predecessors, other attorneys general, and observers of the New Jersey scene, you have become a precious natural resource of the state of New Jersey. John, in my opinion, you're the best attorney general we've had this century. Father Drinan, as Dean of Boston College, law school as not a good congressman, but a great congressman, and I think the Congress of the United States today would pray to have people like you, men and women of your caliber, in the Congress. Thank you for being a great congressman, a great public servant. Thank you for being a great professor at Georgetown Law, where you have trained and been a perfect exemplar for so many young men and women who have become lawyers. But you are a great example to all public officers, men and women alike. To my firm, you have been so good and patient and understanding with me, and that's one of the sad parts of leaving you. I said the other night, I'm almost willing to say something along the lines of what MacArthur said at Leyte, but I think that's probably bad news for the law firm. To my friends, and one sentence here and there, to my friends in law enforcement, stay zealous without being zealots. And there's a distinction there. To my dear friends in the trade union movement, thank you for your loyalty, thank you for your affection, and thank you most of all for paying the bills. A particular thanks to you. You, for 75 years, have played such a critical role in the professional and the personal lives of my father, my brother, to my law firm, and working with you has been a treasured memory. I have done a lot of good things. I've tried to do a lot of good things. I don't know if I've entirely succeeded, but I don't know that anything has given me more satisfaction than working with you and representing the working men and working women of the state of New Jersey. And to all of you, all of my friends up here, out there, you have been conductors on the train which brought me to this station today. Ulysses, in the poem by Tennyson, says, quote, "I have been a part of all that I have met," end quote. I too have been a part of all of you. I've been shaped directly or indirectly by so many of you, and to you I say thank you again. To those special few who helped me in the last few years and the last few months, I've tried to express myself in recent weeks to you. The important thing is that you know who you are, I know who you are, and at the end of the day, that is all that really matters. To a couple wonderful ladies, to Donna Anna Pete and to Diane Hersig, thank you for helping me put today together at a time when I wasn't put together very well. Most of all, of course, and finally, my family. To my sister Judy Hughes, she received the best genes from our parents. Andy got a good share, and I earned a few crumbs. To my brother Andy, in a word, all who know us, really know us, know that he is the better lawyer, the better brother, and the better person. To my children, Mara, Jimmy, Robert, Courtney, Kevin, just very briefly, this is not a time for biography, but Mara is right now, clerked for Dan O'Hearn, is right now clerking for federal Judge Basker, will be with the Gibbons firm next year. Jimmy Jr., who is an aspiring actor along with his brother Robert. Jimmy's on the East Coast in New York, Robert's on the West Coast. Jimmy's doing some film work and commercials. Robert is doing television work, and they're doing a great job. If I had half of their personality, half of their drive, I could have been a contender. To Courtney, who flew out last night, as did Robert from the West Coast. Courtney is with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, which is the domestic equivalent of the Peace Corps, and she's in Northern California ever since graduating from Georgetown last year as a volunteer working with the poor, the elderly, and the disadvantaged. And she's doing that with room and board and a stipend of $75 a month. As her sister said to her, Courtney, that'll barely keep you in hair products. And there's Kevin, whom you can, as you can see, is the tallest, who is the biggest, but he's not just tall in height. He stands tall in the eyes of his parents and his siblings for a lot of reasons. He's going into a senior year at Rumson Fairhaven, and of him we are all very, very proud. You know, this is great, and this job is of importance to me, enormous importance. I dedicate my coming years, all my energy to this job. It will be my priority, but objectively, this is not my legacy. That is my legacy. To my mother-in-law there, Mary Fitzsimmons, who for 70 years has been compared to a woman that I think she beats out at every score, Maureen O'Hara, and they looked like each other for years. She still looks great going into her 89th year. So God bless her. Finally, of course, there's my wife, Eileen, and to her I owe everything. I owe the children, of course. I owe this career. This, in a word, would never have happened without her support and love over these years. I owe her my very life. Nothing would have been possible without her being there. I think one story explains the whole relationship, explained how I have turned out. It was 2 years ago. I was taking Eileen and a couple of the children to Ireland. I called the West Coast to County Cork to find a hotel, get rooms in a hotel that I heard great things about. I got the receptionist, Kathleen. Kathleen says, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "Well, I'd like 2 rooms for July 9th and 10th. Let me get your reservations." So she gets me reservations. "Hello, what can I do for you? This is Bridget." I said, "Bridget, I'd like 2 rooms for the July, blah, 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 blah." She says, "I'm sorry, I can't do a thing for you." I said, "Well, I know it doesn't help that my name is Zazzali, but if it means anything," I said, "I'm married to a Fitzsimmons." "Oh," she said, "that'll make a man out of you." The truth is, I never had a natural sense of humor. As one of the members of the Bar Association, when they conducted their inquisition of judges, it was a good interview, but one of them said, "You know, people say you have this sense of humor, but you really take yourself too seriously, don't you?" And I said, "I probably do." He was rather insightful. And the proof of that maybe is about 2 years ago, I guess it was. I took Eileen out to her birthday, and for her birthday, and we were having dinner, and I was getting into my typically serious mood and started reflecting on the future instead of talking about her or her future. And I said, "You know, my only goal right now is to stay healthy, to watch myself, to just keep on living, and to take care of you and the kids. I just want to stay alive." And she looked at me right in the eye and said, "You know, you have, you know," she said, how was it? I don't like to hear you talking that way." It took a second. She says, "I don't like to hear you talking that way." Well, I said to myself, "You fool, this is a birthday, her birthday, lighten up." So I came back, I said, "Don't worry, honey, I'm gonna live to be 100. She looked me in the eye and says, "You know, I don't like to hear you talking that way." Well, now on the serious end of things, but not too serious, it's hardly the time or the place to elucidate or explicate a judicial philosophy. I think most of you by this point would rather go and have a drink. In an hour or two, the party will be over in more ways than one. And the first thing I think I have to do is to put aside the nice things that have been said today or the nice things in the press and recognize that I have a responsibility here. Everyone's entitled, I suppose, to their one brief shining moment or to Andy Warhol's 15 minutes. But I'm reminded of Stevenson's line, "When the tumult and the shouting die, when the bands are gone and the lights are dimmed, there is the stark reality of responsibility." And I know that starts at 8:30 tomorrow. Chief Justice would rather have it 7:30, but we'll work with that. Seriously, I do know that my responsibility is to do justice to the people of the state of New Jersey as best I can, to reach the right and the fair decision. And simply stated, that means applying the law to the facts and sprinkling it with a dose of common sense. I think care, though, must always be taken about both the end and the means. And here, too, it's appropriate to note T.S. Eliot's line, which I cited before as Attorney General, that the last temptation is the greatest treason, to do the right thing for the wrong reason. And what that simply means is to avoid bias and prejudice, but it's more than that. It means to avoid bringing an agenda to the table. Having said that, I don't think it's inappropriate to invest that process with a vision, whatever that vision may be. So we can combine vision and common sense and objectivity. And my vision is that all of us, not just judges, but of all of us in our lives and work, contribute to the triumph of justice over injustice, of consensus over conflict, of lightness and light over dark, and of substance over shadows. I think that in this fractious and fractured world, collectively and individually, this court will remain a force for good, and I am so privileged to be part of it. For this court as a whole is indeed greater than the sum of its parts. That was a serious part. Now the hard part. I dedicate these coming years to the memory of my parents. Without boring you with biographies, my mother, as some of you know, was born in one of those striking hill towns in Tuscany between Siena and Florence. My good friend Dean Riccio commented not too long ago that he remembered my mother well, and he had one word for her. He said that she was elegant. Well, that may have been true, but I think another word defines her better, and that word is simpatico. I've never quite known what that word means. It defies translation. I think I have a sense of it, and I hope that in practice I have a feel for it. Virtually all of us think that our fathers were or are the best of men. And we have all good reason, each in our individual way, to think that way about our respective fathers, especially with Father's Day just 2 days past. In terms of my own dad, I thought of him paradoxically as the most virtuous and virile of men. And that's not simply because he was such a fine person or because he distinguished himself with various assignments in the Roosevelt and Truman administrations, or because he was, in the minds of many, probably the best natural athlete in Georgetown's history, having been the first one to be admitted to its Hall of Fame. No, my thanks to my dad are because in a very difficult time as a young adolescent, when I was so fragile physically and emotionally, he brought me through it. But there's one incident that defines the relationship, which demonstrated that he was always the parent and always the gentleman. After Georgetown in 1925, Dad went out to practice law in Kansas City. At the same time, the man from Independence was getting his start in Kansas City. And 25 years later, in 1950, that man was in the White House. He was on the verge of nominating my father to the federal court in New Jersey. There were then only 3 federal judgeships in the state. The political leaders up north, however, had their own candidate, and that was their prerogative. They were frantic because they could not identify and thus could not neutralize Dad's support. Everyone else was curious. And thereupon, when I was about 12 years old, in that day in 1950, and it's almost 50 years to the day, I received a reporter's call at home. I was home alone, and he started pumping me as to all of my dad's background and support. The problem was not with the reporter. He had a job to do. The problem was with me. I was so proud of Dad's support and background that I told all. And having told all, the next day it was a front-page story. In 1950, some of those quite legitimate political leaders were, as you may recall, at the very height of their power. They went to work, which was again their right and prerogative. They fought. It was a fair fight. They won, and that was the end of Dad's federal judgeship. Always the gentleman. Dad never showed any anger or resentment. Always the parent. He never mentioned the incident to me for the rest of his life. He did not have to, because instinctively I knew and I sensed it from others that I had made a terrible mistake. But I understated to say that for exactly 50 years, I've thought about this pretty often. I learned that it's probably good to keep quiet at times. And might say, fortunately, my children have learned to deal with some of my good journalist friends, particularly Kevin. Over the past couple of months, he received a couple of calls from reporters. He answered, "Sorry, I can't talk to you. Speak with my father." So, Kevin, I might not be here today if you had not used your good judgment. But seriously, this day, for the reasons, I know that was maybe self-revelatory, but I've always been of the opinion that sometimes it doesn't hurt to show our private faces in public places. But it is important to me because, again, I thank Governor Whitman, not because it's simply the culmination of a career, but because today represents, to me at least, the vindication of a father and the redemption of a son. It only took half a century. They also serve who only stand and wait. If I could get through those last few thoughts, I can get through the next few years. Of course, as I said last week, the federal judges are saying out there, but you're still not a federal judge. And they know what I'm saying. I thought that in closing, I'd return to those who use language better than any of us, better than the lawyers, the judges, or even the justices. I'm thinking of the poets. Looking over my shoulder, I see time's winged chariot hurrying near. But I nonetheless confront the future with hope, with optimism, indeed with joy. And I return to Tennyson's Ulysses. It's an interesting story. It's not Homer's Ulysses, the stories of the young adventures and odysseys of a young man conquering the world. Rather, it is the story of Ulysses who decides to make one last journey. And so, with apologies to Lord Alfred for some paraphrasing, I close with the lines that he used. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rust unburnished, not to shine in use. Death closes all, but sometime near the end, some work of noble note may yet be done. And though we have not that strength which we had in days of old, which moved heaven and earth, that which we are, we are. And though much is taken, much abides. And thus my purpose holds, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. And so come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Thank you.
I now ask Andrew Zazzali, longtime law partner and even longer time brother of Justice Zazzali, and yet another graduate of Georgetown Law Center, to make a few closing remarks. Andrew Zazzali has had his own distinguished career in the law, having served as first assistant Essex County prosecutor, as counsel to the Sports and Exposition Authority, and as a municipal court judge. Today, Andrew Zazzali is a prominent labor lawyer. It is fitting indeed that he should speak about his brother.
Governor Whitman, Chief Justice, Associate Justices, Father Drinan, boss, and dignitaries and friends of Jimmy. when Jimmy was nominated, everybody said, "You must be proud." And you're proud because he's attained position in a profession, esteem, but most of all, they say how well he's respected. Well, I'm more proud of my brother because of how he respected others. Clients were first of all friends, people that we work with. He always considered their well-being, even to the point of annoying a lot of clients at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sundays with those calls. I know they were annoying to them, but I know you realize that it was Jimmy's interest in your well-being. A few of you are here who have suffered through those Sunday morning, just a minute I want to speak to you, that evolve into 2 hours. Sunday mornings with me, if it's raining, you might catch me. Jimmy was in the tradition of our father, what you call a real gentle man. And my dad gave us a bit of advice when we went to work for Brendan. He says, do the best job you can, but don't take yourself too seriously. And so, Jimmy, so you don't take yourself too seriously, I got a few anecdotes to tell your colleagues on the bench what they can expect. When Jimmy was about 6 years old, he showed his first aptitude for the law. He was made aware of the might of the law when he hid in the pantry behind my mother's pots and pans until the fire engines cleared, who had responded to his accidental setting of the fire alarm in the neighborhood. Then a few years later, Jimmy came home with a dead pigeon, and we thought he would now become a doctor because he took the pigeon and he cooked it like a chicken in my mother's best pot, then disassembled the skeleton and reassembled it. He then progressed, I guess, when he got a little stronger, I thought he'd be a man of letters. He showed an interest in literature, large books. When he didn't get his way from our second-story bedroom that we shared, if I didn't do what he asked me to do or prevented him from doing what he wanted to do, he would play bombardier with Webster's dictionary and bounce it off his brother's head. Then he got mature, showed real maturity when he got married to Eileen. And he shared a room at the hotel on the eve of the wedding. And then in his haste to get away on the honeymoon, he took all the wedding gift envelopes and he put them under the pillow in the hotel room and then left. Fortunately, his older brother was there to retrieve them and return them. Most of them. Statutes run on that. So that's how he got where he is now, and he's a rare individual, as you all know. At his swearing in last week, Chief Justice administered the oath, and Jimmy, after the administration of the oath, he said to the Chief Justice, I got my brother to hold the Bible. I wish I could get him to read it. Well, it's too late for that, too. But I'm familiar with the Bible, Jim, and I thought there's one parable that for some reason I always liked, and I think it's apropos to today, and that's the parable of the prodigal son. 7 years from now, after you lead what will probably be a very dissolute way of life as a justice of the Supreme Court, and dissipate all your savings on wine, women, and song, we'll welcome you back, Jimmy.
That concludes the ceremony, but not the celebration. Justice Zazzali and his family invite all of you to join us in the ballroom.